Hello and welcome back, and today is a hardware review of the TVS-h1688X. Now, this is a device that I've kind of already talked about. If you've already looked at my review of the TVS-h1288X, pretty much 90, maybe even 95% of what I'm going to tell you today is exactly the same. So, although I am going to talk about a lot of these things, if you have already watched that video, you're not going to take much more than that. But for you guys that saw that one and just want to know the difference, this has got 4 more hard drive bays and it arrives with 32 gig of memory, not 16. Thanks for watching, subscribe, catch you later. Now, the rest of you that stuck around that don't know about this device, let me tell you about an absolute behemoth. This is the new 16, technically 12 bay storage device from QNAP. We've already done the unboxing, and this is part of a new series of devices from them that stands out for a number of reasons. First, it is the first series of NAS devices from them that is optional Thunderbolt. Prior to this, QNAP have largely dominated the Thunderbolt NAS field with a few brands such as QSAN and Promise, making promises on Thunderbolt related devices that have never really followed through for one reason or another. They've come to market some of them, but they've kind of disappeared into obscurity, with QNAP really capitalizing on the advantage of Thunderbolt NAS overall. Now, this device is that first tier that doesn't arrive with Thunderbolt dedicated. There's an additional card that you can buy that is around 140 nicker, and it's a 2-port Thunderbolt 3 card. Now, I know there's mixed feelings here, because there's some of you going, oh, I get it, QNAP's trying to cash in now, aren't they? They're not going to give it to us, they're going to make us pay extra. And that's right, some of you might think that, and there is an argument for that. Then there's the other side of the coin, where Thunderbolt NAS devices from QNAP have always been exorbitantly more expensive than their non-Thunderbolt counterparts, and you've always had to pay through the nose to get a Thunderbolt NAS. And a lot of the time, Thunderbolt NASs, with the exception of one device, the 453BT3, generally Thunderbolt requires a lot more oomph in a NAS to get things going. Consequently, you see these NASs that have got insane internal hardware, i5s, i7s, the latest, the previous, no, I'm not going to say previous generation, but the most recent Thunderbolt NAS before this came out with a 6-core 8th Gen i5. You just can't get those Intel cores on anything else than Thunderbolt NASs now, and they're so expensive. So some people want to get a NAS like this, but they don't want to pay the premium of Thunderbolt on top. So it's nice to have that flexibility, but still nonetheless only 140 nicker, so it's not that much of a premium. Now, what is it about this device that makes it so interesting? Well, the internal CPU, it's an Intel Xeon, the W1250, which is a 6-core embedded graphics processor. And I'm sure there's information on screen right now, but it's an absolute behemoth for virtual machines, for large-scale databases, hyperscale sort of environments, for that virtual machine deployment, both internally and as a standalone system. It does very well, be it as a iSCSI target with VMware, or it's going to be utilized with their own proprietary virtualization station software. Also, in multimedia and 4K, it's insane. The 1288X, we ran on this system, the smaller version of this, 400 megabits per second bit rate, 4K, 2160p, UHD, H.265, 10-bit media transcodes simultaneously, 3 of them at once, and it did the job. It used a lot of the hardware, but that is virtually unheard of in all of my testing. On top of that, that CPU also arrives with 32 gig of ECC error code correction DDR4 memory, up to 128 if you want to upscale it, which again, for you VM users or hyperscale users, for a desktop device to have that kind of hardware under the bonnet is almost unheard of. Now, I am talking about this desktop, but it's practically a rack mount that sits on your table. From its 550 watt PSU with separate power cable for graphics cards inside this device, to 16 bays of storage on the front, 12 hard drive bays and 4 SSD bays, all SATA, along with 2 M2 NVMe bays that are Gen 3x4 each. That is an insane amount of storage, whether you're going to use it for triple tier storage caching in the ZFS file system we'll talk about in a bit, or you're going to use them each as independent storage pools, which this does support. You can have one 12 bay hard drive storage pool in a RAID 5, RAID 6, RAID 50, RAID 60, whatever, or you can have the, and you can use the 4 SATA SSD bays in a lovely little RAID 5 or RAID 1, depending on your redundancy requirements, and even the 2 NVMe's can be pulled together in a RAID 0 or RAID 1 for their own storage pool. Thunderbolt testing of this device by QNAP themselves got performance with the NVMe's alone at over 1500 megs over Thunderbolt, which I know generally in terms of direct attached storage doesn't sound like much, but Thunderbolt over IP is a very different beast. And when you do deal with these systems and Thunderbolt over IP, you're never going to get the same performance as you would with a direct attached storage Thunderbolt. But what you have is the ability for multiple users to connect to this device over Thunderbolt, allowing you to add 4 or even 6 cards if you use all 3 slots, allowing 6 ports to allow you to have 6 individual users connecting to this device over Thunderbolt, as well as, or instead of, depending on the slot, 2 dedicated 10G ports. We're going to talk about the ports in a little bit. Now, I mentioned ZFS there. This system arrives with zettabyte file system, ZFS. That is that incredibly high performance but resource hungry file system with QUTS Hero and all the apps inside. So you've got RAID Z, you've got triple parity RAID, you've got the elimination of the volume layer with all of your data being written directly to the storage pool, or all 3 if you choose. And the benefits of inline compression to save space, inline deduplication to save a lot of space and tasks, and ultimately making the performance that much better. And with the improvements in internal caching, with read and read-write caching alternatives, and the benefits of SSD hard drive caching in ZFS all being present in QUTS Hero, with the added benefits of RAID build, rebuild and more being snappy, minutes fast. We are talking single digits build time for a RAID 5. It's just got it all going on in terms of the internals and the externals, and a lot of it is thanks to that CPU and memory and the enormous amount of storage at its fingertips. There are, of course, rudimentary factors. There is a lovely little LCD panel that I quite like, even though a number of us will very rarely use it. Anyone that's ever worked in the world of storage, I'm sure these have saved your bacon, either because you've had to check the IPs, or you're getting an alert and you don't know what it is, or you need to know the temperature if you're concerned about a noise. It's nice to have that there rather than to have to log into the device remotely. Another rudimentary feature down there, the USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, 10 gigabits per second connectivity there on the front, allowing you to attach a fast acting storage drive to that front panel for another tier to your backup strategy. In fact, there are another 5 USB 3.2 Gen 2 10 gigabit per second ports here on the rear, allowing you to attach external drives, faster external drives. I mean, at the moment we've got some testing coming up soon. I don't know if you've seen this before. This is the G-Tech Mobile Pro SSD, connects via Thunderbolt with an NVMe inside. We're going to be testing this as a backup system on this, or using some of that expanded storage options, as well as USB 3.2 Gen 2 external drive from SanDisk here. Both of these we're going to test on this system to work just the performance this can give us internally and externally. Now, we talk about internal and external performance. Let's look at those ports on the rear. There's going to be a bit of noise there. If we turn it around, look at the state of that. That is an absolute smorgasbord of connections and hardware to take a gander at there. Now, before we go any further, I am going to mention a few negatives, because this device is by no means perfect. I have never seen a network storage device that I consider perfect yet. And remember, this is a hardware review, and we're focusing on hardware here. So straight away, it's worth highlighting, number one, this is not a quiet device. This is going to make a racket. It has got 3 big old cooling fans here, which, although you can adjust manually, I would strongly recommend you leave as automated. Inside there is a slotted, dedicated, that's on the other side, a dedicated twin cooling fan system for the memory, CPU heatsink, which is huge, and the internal NVMe's. And it's drawing air through the device. Look at the size of that vent panel there. That is, 2-3 times bigger than traditional NASs have, because of that internal cooling array. And again, check out the hardware review and the article in the description to see more information. We've broken this device and the 1288 down to have a good look at that cooling system. Now, in my previous video, I did comment that I didn't like the fact that although there was ventilation on the front and the back, there was nothing on the sides. The base has a little bit of vents underneath the hard drives and it's raised by rubberized feet, but there's little more than that. However, in testing of the 1288, where we removed the chassis while it was in operation, the temperature and cooling system went bananas and the fans ramped up extraordinarily high. And we worked out that the reason there's no side vents on this is the system is designed to have controlled airflow through the device, over the PCBs, over the transistors, over the controllers, over the heat sinks, over everything. And that fan inside just assists in keeping that air passing over and, you know, enhancing active cooling. So I retract the complaint about the lack of cooling vents on the side, because you can see it's definitely an engineering construction here. However, I find it slightly less agreeable about the noise this thing makes, because not only that metal chassis, not only the multitude of storage arrays with, if you put enterprise drives in there, are going to come and work quite a lot. This is not the quietest device when it's in operation. Even if you put one drive inside it, it's going to be noticeable. That's why I keep referring to this as the desktop, or I would say rack mount dressed as a desktop, because this, I would say, makes the noise of a rack mount. It makes the imprint of a rack mount in your environment. And if you aren't looking to get a rack mount solution but need that kind of performance and that build quality and robust storage, that's when this lives. That's where it lives. Now, if we look at the rear of those ports, we can see two 10GBE ports. Then again, that's using a dedicated 10G2 port controller. That means that all of the work of processing 10G in throughput and sending it on its way is done by the card. That card then just funnels it through to the system, so the system doesn't have to break its back on 10G throughput. There's also those two more slots there. Two slots at PCIe Gen 3 x 4, so 4,000 meg throughput to the board each. They are where you put your your Thunderbolt 3 cards, but there's also more 10G cards that you can put inside there, and other storage appropriate cards and combo cards too. But another little negative, this 2-port card here lives in a PCIe Gen 3 x 8 slot. That's an 8,000 meg throughput single lane slot there, through a single lane. And it's being used for a 2-port 10G card that will never see higher than 2,000 megs. That card is where you're going to put, that slot is where you're going to put your GPU cards. That slot is where you're going to put your enormous performance 25G fiber channel, your 40GBE network QSFP cards. That is where you put that sort of stuff in there. And it's a shame that they've chosen to put that card in. I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't know what it is. And if you guys at QNAP can let me know, please tell me, because that's just confusing to me. Now, moving forward, we can see that we have got those 4 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports and another one down here. And again, all of them are supporting 10 gigs per second, and there's A and C type ports. So peripheral KVM devices in conjunction with the HDMI, they can be utilized for expansion devices with a wide range of QNAP expansions going all the way up to 16 bays, but they utilize proprietary external SAS PCIe cards that go here. But there are still lots of USB, both versions 5 and 10 gig that can be connected to this device to expand your storage down the line. Now, moving further on, we have 4 more LAN ports. Not only have we got the 2 10s up here, which with link aggregation gives you a cool 20 gig or 2,000 megs, but down here, 4 2.5 GBE ports. With link aggregation, there's another 10G or 1,000 megs. So a combined broad throughput of 3,000 megs externally. Bear in mind, you're going to have to involve some port trunking. It probably isn't going to be able to be dedicated to a single device, although you can feed that into a smart enough network switch, but there's still no avoiding that that is a great little addition there. And huge amount of connectivity, something that when I was doing my unboxing I commented on, that QNAP only provide one cable. I know it's Cat6 and that's lovely, but one cable? There's like 6 ports on this device. Actually, while I'm talking about the accessories, I will highlight that there is information with regards to your warranty. You get 3 years of warranty, but it can be upped to 5 years quite easily, and I know a number of you that care about that sort of thing. about knowing you've got that bit of manufacturer peace of mind, because the software is largely lifetime warranty, but the hardware isn't, like on any device. It's nice to have that upgrade option. But again, that thing with the cable, confusing. Anyway, moving forward, at the base there we have got an HDMI 1.4B port, which is a little underwhelming. I've got to say, I'm not hugely impressed by that, but credit and fair play to QNAP, they can't put an HDMI 2.0 on this. HDMI 1.4B is 60 frames per second, 1080p, and 4K at 30 frames per second. But the CPU inside this device does not go higher than 1.4B. Now, for all of the good that that CPU brings, I think we can lose the HDMI port being 4K 60 frames per second. I think we can live without that. Don't get me wrong, those that are going to use this as a dedicated editing rig, or those that are going to be using it for surveillance and have a huge camera feed, they're the ones that would take advantage of that higher end 4K display. But for all of the things that processor can do, there aren't many other processors outside of a 9th or 10th gen Intel Core that challenge this processor. So that is a small price to pay to me. And as you know, as annoying as I find it, it's understandable why QNAP did that. Now on the base here, we have got that PSU 550 watts, but again, at that scale, it was never going to be an external. So as much as I love an external one, I know this was never going to have it. And finally, we have got audio in and out and a speaker. So you can attach microphones and speakers or dedicate those to a VM or a surveillance setup. And you've got an audio alert here that will tell you about RAID rebuilding, RAID resyncing, all the kind of things it can do. And when there's a process happening on the system, it can audibly let you know in words that you understand, not just beep or bop or anything like that, which I've always liked. I know a lot of people turn that feature off, but I quite like it. Now, what can we say about this device to sum up? It is a beast. We are getting a lot for our money, but what money? We already probably saw at the top of the video, this device, this is the 32 gig model. It knocks around for about 2,700 nicker. It is not cheap. You would expect some hardware, and you get some hardware, but well in excess of 2.5K without hard drive media inside is a big ask, and that's why this is very enterprise. It is a rack mount dressed as a desktop, but you still get one of the best and most high performance internally, externally, and in terms of storage NAS systems in desktop I have ever seen, and that's why I love this device and the 8/12 bay. Is it perfect? Of course not. Nothing really is, but what small imperfections there are can be glossed over with the sheer insane performance this brings to the party. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do check out the review in the description where we go into more detail, and there's lots more photos and information about the inside of this device. Of course, visit the guys at span.com, the NAS experts. They will help you every step of the way when buying your perfect data storage solution. It is a plug, but it's still true. I will see you guys next time.